Hello good people, and welcome back to another math video. This time we are going to talk about how to compare and order fractions, decimals, and percents. Alright, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just a couple rules here, and one is that the units need to be the same, and by the units I mean whether or not we're working with a fraction, a decimal, or a percent. Don't just guess and try to decide. We're going to turn these all into the same actual form or unit. And in this case, my strong suggestion is that decimals are really your best option. They're going to be much more numerically clear than a fraction in terms of deciding what's bigger, and it's always easy to move from a percent to a decimal. Alright. So just a quick reminder, if we're going to move from a fraction like this, and we want to turn this into some sort of decimal, like what would go right here, what we need to do is we need to divide the top number, which is the numerator, by the bottom number, which is the denominator. So this is not too hard. If you have a calculator, you're going to divide 3 by 8. Now this is important. It's not 8 by 3. It's 3 by 8. If you're doing the long division, you're going to divide the 3 by 8, and when you are done you would have this decimal. So first we'll compare two different fractions here. We have 7/10 and 3/4, and if you just look at them it might be hard to have an idea of which one is bigger, but if we do the division and turn these into decimals it becomes quite clear. So if you have a calculator and you divide 7 by 10 you will get 7/10, and if you divide 3 by 4, you'll get 75/100. So it becomes a little easier to compare these. Now, just to make this easier, you are allowed to add a 0 in here after the last decimal place, and that doesn't change the value. And now we're looking at 2 decimal places compared to 2 decimal places, and 75 is bigger than 70, so I will say that 3/4 is larger than 7/10. You might be asked to order some fractions. So here we're being asked to order from least to greatest the following fractions. And again, if you just stare at these fractions, it's pretty tough to just kind of know off the top of your head which one is biggest or smallest or in between. But if we get out our handy calculator and do some quick division, we can turn these into fractions. So to do that, you're just going to take the top number in each case and you're going to divide it by the bottom number. Some of these you might know, like 1/2 is going to be 5/10. 1/6, this one is less common. You probably don't know this one off the top of your head, but this is 16/100, but the 6 is repeating. 1/4, this is 25/100. And 9/12, this is 75/100. Now again, we have 5/10 here that does not have a second decimal place, but of course we can add one in. And so now I can see that they're much more easy to compare. So 1/6, because we essentially have 16/100 here with that 6 repeating, this is going to be our smallest number. So I would write that first if I was putting these in order from least to greatest. And I might do a simple cross out or something like this to let me know I had done this one. Next I'd have 1/4. Then I would have 1/2. And lastly I would have 9/12. And now those are correctly ordered from least to greatest. We might have a comparison where we're comparing a fraction to a decimal. Now, I said that it's easiest to compare these if we are looking at decimals. Of course, this one is already in a decimal form. This is 82/100. But what about over here? This is not in a decimal form. But we can divide the 8 by the 10, and if we do that, we will get 8/10. Remember I said you are allowed to add a 0 after your last point, last place, in order to have 2 different digits here. It sometimes makes it easier to compare. So 82 is of course larger than 80, so I would say that 82/100 is greater than 8/10. You also might have a situation where you're asked to compare three different numbers and they are in three different forms. Now remember, we said that it is easiest to have things in the decimal form. Of course, 55/100ths in the middle here is already in the decimal form. Now 54%, to make a percent into decimal, we need to move 2 places to the left. So this would be 54/100ths, which leaves us with just this fraction. And if we do the division, we'll get 5/10ths, and of course we can add a 0. And now these are going to be pretty easy to compare. And I can see that if I was comparing these, of course it didn't say. So let's just say we're comparing least to greatest up here. So 1/2, that is my smallest number. This is 50/100ths. Then my next one is 54%. And my last one would be 55/100ths. And again, I did that by turning these all into decimals, which made them very easy to compare. All right, another one. Again, we want these to all be decimals. So 4/10ths is already a decimal. 38%, I just have to move my decimal point 2 spots to the left, and then I have 38/100ths. Now, these get a little tough to compare because they aren't the same overall length, but again, we can always add that 0 after our last decimal place, and so now they are a little easier visually to take a look at. So lastly, we just have 5/8. With your calculator right nearby, we just do 5 divided by 8, and you will get 625 thousandths. Now, this kind of creates a little bit of a problem for us because now we have a number that has 3 decimal places compared to our other ones that only have 2. But just like we added this 0 in here, it's no problem to add another, and we can add one over here just to make it so that all of our decimals are the same physical length. And adding that 0 on the backside doesn't change the value. And now I'm looking at 625 thousandths, 400 thousandths, and 380 thousandths. And now it's pretty easy to see which one is the largest or smallest. So let's pretend we are asked to put these in order from greatest to least. So from greatest to least, the largest one is the 625 thousandths, and that original number was the fraction. The next would be my 400 thousandths, and the original number was that decimal 4/10ths. And lastly, 380 thousandths, and that original number was 38%. Okay, so oddly enough, these were already in kind of the correct order here, but that wasn't the intention. But we did go through the process of converting them into decimals so that we could compare them all. All right, that's really pretty it. So number 1, they need to have all kind of the same type, and in order for you to easily compare. And number 2, can't stress this enough, turn them all into decimals as the easiest way to compare them. Okay, hope that helps. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.